Coastal and low-lying regions in the Philippines are experiencing widespread flooding as Tropical Storm Raml, international name, Fengshen, made landfall and moved across the country. Heavy rainfall, storm surges, and the overflow of major river basins have inundated communities, prompting preemptive evacuations and mounting emergency responses from government agencies. Following its landfall over Gubat, Sorsogon on Saturday, October 18th, Tropical Storm Ramil brought intense precipitation to the Bicol region and eastern Visayas. The storm's path has continued westward, with a projected second landfall expected in central Luzon, threatening areas including Metro Manila. The Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration, PAGASA, issued warnings for coastal flooding caused by storm surges, with waves potentially reaching up to 2 meters high. The impoverished island of Catanduanes and coastal areas of Albay were particularly vulnerable, with thousands of residents forced to evacuate. The persistent, heavy rains have led to elevated water levels and subsequent overflow of river systems. PAGASA issued flood advisories for several river basins, including the Bicol and Pampanga river basins, indicating a high risk of flooding in surrounding low-lying and flood-prone areas. Roxas City in Capais opened its city hall as an emergency evacuation center after nearby barangays were affected by rising floodwaters. The storm's trajectory toward Metro Manila raises concerns about urban flooding, a recurring problem in the highly populated capital region. Over-congested drainage systems and inadequate infrastructure exacerbate the risks of flash floods during periods of intense rainfall. A recent flood advisory from PAGASA regarding severe tropical storm Christine in October 2024 served as a stark reminder of this vulnerability, with hundreds of barangays in Metro Manila identified as being susceptible to flooding. The continuous downpour, especially in mountainous regions, has increased the threat of landslides. Officials in affected provinces are closely monitoring mountain slopes and advising residents in susceptible areas to remain vigilant and heed evacuation orders. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council and local government units initiated preemptive evacuations in high-risk areas. In the Bicol region alone, nearly 8,000 families were evacuated. In Albay and Catanduanes, tens of thousands of residents moved to safer ground in anticipation of the storm's impact. The Department of Social Welfare and Development has pre-positioned relief goods and is assisting stranded individuals in ports across the affected regions. The Department of Health placed all hospitals in the storm's path on Code White Alert to prepare for any medical emergencies. Interagency coordination is ongoing, reflecting the country's own disaster response protocols, which have been refined through experience with numerous tropical cyclones each year. The World Risk Index for 2025 again ranked the Philippines as one of the most at-risk countries for flooding. Scientific studies indicate that climate change is increasing the intensity and frequency of typhoons, leading to more extreme rainfall events. The country is also experiencing sea level rise at twice the global average, exacerbating coastal flooding and storm surges. Unplanned urban expansion, particularly in low-lying and coastal areas, has intensified flood risk by replacing natural floodplains with impermeable concrete surfaces. A study from August 2025 highlighted how land cover changes contribute to increased flood depths in river systems. While the government implements flood control projects, these efforts are often criticized for their perceived ineffectiveness. Past scandals involving corruption in flood control projects have raised public distrust and highlight systemic weaknesses in addressing the root causes of flooding. While early warning systems exist, the focus on the storm's core path sometimes leads the public to underestimate the threat from outer rain bands, which can cause significant flooding. As Tropical Storm Ramil continues its path, residents are urged to remain vigilant and follow official warnings from PAGASA and local disaster management offices. The focus remains on immediate relief and assistance for affected communities, while also calling for a long-term, comprehensive strategy to mitigate the devastating impacts of future flood disasters. This includes addressing the systemic issues of urbanization, infrastructure, and the growing threat posed by climate change. The recent floods and landslides serve as a crucial test of Baguio's disaster preparedness. The city's transformation from a tranquil retreat to a bustling metropolis has put immense pressure on its natural resources and infrastructure. While the city has made significant strides in disaster risk reduction, the relentless forces of nature and the accelerating pace of climate change demand constant vigilance and innovation. For Baguio's residents, the heavy rain is not just an inconvenience but a harbinger of the unpredictable and dangerous realities of a warming world. The road to recovery for those affected by the landslides and floods is ongoing, and the experience will undoubtedly inform future efforts to make the city safer and more resilient for all. Responding to this emergency situation, local authorities and search and rescue teams immediately began rescue operations. Rescuers used rubber boats and other equipment to evacuate stranded residents, especially those trapped on rooftops. Although these efforts are ongoing, challenges remain due to continued rainfall and dangerous wave conditions. The flooding has significantly impacted the daily lives and livelihoods of Bayuyan residents. Homes have been submerged, properties have been damaged, and access to essential services has been cut off. Residents in coastal areas are particularly vulnerable to flooding due to rising sea levels and increasingly intense storms due to climate change. This incident adds to the long list of flood disasters that frequently hit the Philippines. The incident in Estancia highlights the impact of climate change in the Philippines, where the increasing intensity and frequency of tropical storms are causing extreme rainfall. The UN 2025 report states that the Philippines is among the countries most vulnerable to climate change. A combination of natural and human factors, such as illegal logging practices in upstream areas, exacerbates the flood risk. The incident in Estancia highlights the impact of climate change in the Philippines, where the increasing intensity and frequency of tropical storms are causing extreme rainfall. The UN 2025 report states that the Philippines is among the countries most vulnerable to climate change. A combination of natural and human factors, such as illegal logging practices in upstream areas, exacerbates the risk of flooding. While rescue efforts continue, the local government, in collaboration with national agencies such as the NDRRMC and DSWD, is prioritizing the distribution of aid to the affected areas. Long-term measures, including improved drainage systems, coastal protection, and disaster mitigation programs, are needed to help coastal communities like Bayuyan adapt to climate change and the expected increase in extreme weather events. Local authorities reported that the floodwaters in Canoan rose to dangerous levels within hours, leaving many residents trapped inside their homes. The water rose so fast, said a resident who asked not to be identified. Many of our neighbors had to climb to their rooftops to wait for rescue. The situation was particularly challenging for the elderly and young children, who were unable to move to safety on their own. The flooding in Canoan has had a devastating impact on the community. Aside from the physical damage to homes and property, residents also lost valuable belongings and sources of livelihood. Fishing equipment, which many residents rely on for their income, was swept away by the floodwaters. The recovery process is expected to be long and difficult, especially for those with limited resources. The flood in Canoan is a stark reminder of the escalating risks posed by climate change. As a coastal community, Canoan is highly susceptible to storm surges, heavy rainfall, and rising sea levels. The increasing intensity and frequency of tropical storms, like Raml, have amplified these vulnerabilities. A recent UN report ranked the Philippines among the most vulnerable countries to climate change, emphasizing the need for comprehensive adaptation and mitigation strategies. While immediate relief and rescue efforts are crucial, long-term solutions are needed to address the root causes of flooding in communities like Kanoan. Investing in and upgrading the barangay's drainage infrastructure to handle larger volumes of water during heavy rainfall. Implementing coastal protection measures, such as mangrove reforestation and seawall construction, to mitigate the impact of storm surges and rising sea levels. Enhancing early warning systems and community education programs to ensure residents are better prepared for and can respond effectively to future flood events. Promoting sustainable land use planning that avoids construction in high-risk areas and protects natural flood defenses. As the floodwaters recede and residents begin the long road to recovery, the experience in Kanoan serves as a powerful call to action for local and national authorities to prioritize climate resilience and invest in measures that will protect vulnerable communities from the growing threat of extreme weather.